Hey guys, this is Monique. I want to welcome you guys back to Glasshouse, Life of an CRNA. So my topic today will be about things to look for when you're looking into CRNA schools. So one of the big things I feel like is if the program is front-loaded or integrated. So what I mean by that is when they're a front-loaded program, you do all of your didactic, is what you usually see when you look it up, or all of your classroom stuff at the beginning of the program, and then you start clinicals. Whereas integrated, you usually have sometimes like a few weeks of classes, and then you start clinicals. So I am in an integrated program, and then I kind of want to give you some tips on how you can kind of pick pros and cons. So the reason why I did an integrated program is because I feel like I am a better learner when I see stuff. Like I can study all day and like do great on tests, but when I see it in the clinical practice, it gets solidified. So that's why I felt like the integrated program was better for me. So my program, we had classes for 8 weeks, and then we started clinicals, and let me tell you, you get super anxious because you feel like you don't really know much because you kind of like just know the gist, like the top of it, just the top. And then you do have to do a lot more legwork when it comes to an integrated program, especially at the beginning, because you kind of have high expectations on yourself, I would say. And then you just want to know as much as you can. And the good thing about my program is they're used to having students in the integrated program, and they know where you are. All the CRNAs know where you are, so you don't feel like the extra pressure. They're like, okay, are you in your first clinical rotation? Okay, great, so we know what to expect from you. So that's what I like. I don't know about every other integrated program, but the program that I'm in, they're great about that, so that's why I like it. Another pro about the integrated program, a lot of them tend to have clinical sites very close to class. So for me, my clinical sites, most of them are within like 4 miles of my house, and then I live like within 3 to 4 miles of the university anyway. So for me, having a family, that is like 8+ to have your clinical sites as close as possible to school and everything like that. I did also get accepted into a front-loaded program, but I just knew that I like learning like everything together, and that the clinical sites were further. So the clinical sites would be like 3+ hours, and you'll be there for a week. And for me, having a family and a kid, like I couldn't take my kid to clinicals with me, so I wouldn't be able to see him unless it was on the weekends. But that's just that one front-loaded program. Just keep in mind. A con, as I said, for an integrated program is just that you have to make sure that you're really like organized, and you have to take the initiative to learn more. So just because you only started clinicals like the first semester doesn't mean that you should know less. Like you have to make sure you know as much as you can, so that, I don't know if that kind of makes sense. You just have to take the initiative to make sure you know as much as you can, even though you should not have the excuse of, oh, this is just my first semester. So that's pretty much it. So I want to make sure I kind of explain that really good, because I feel like a lot of people, I know when I interviewed, I kind of understood the idea of front-loaded versus integrated, but when I was there during the interviews, I like got it so much better. I feel like I didn't get a good explanation, so sorry, that part was a little longer. Okay, so then other things that I would suggest people to look into, when you're looking at the CRNA school, a lot of this information, some of it you can't get necessarily on the websites, but when you interview for the schools, make sure you know about like specifically their clinical sites. So there's certain states like, say, Pennsylvania, where it's all based on the ACT program or an ACT model. So the ACT model is pretty much where CRNAs are supervised by your doctors. And then every facility does it a little bit different, and there's like fine-tuned words to it, but they don't have any CRNA only practices in Pennsylvania. But just because they don't have it does not mean that the CRNAs are not capable of, practicing independently. It's just that they have that model set up in their hospitals, like within the whole entire state. So if you're a person who really wants to work in a CRNA only group, you want to make sure that at least your clinical site offers for you to be able to do that. So the school that I go to is in an ACT state, but they do have clinical sites outside of the state if you really want to do like a CRNA only practice, and they can let you go there. So the option is there, so you don't feel like you're in a window. Because I know for me, I want to practice independently, or I want to make sure I graduate to be able to practice independently, essentially. And even in the ACT programs, or the ACT model, The CRNAs are very independent that I've seen, and they make their own decisions. The doctors are there for supervising. I use that word loosely, and that's pretty much what I'll kind of say on that one. Another thing that you want to make sure you look at is they call it the attrition rate. I could be saying it's a little funny, sorry. But pretty much what that means, because it's a nice fancy word for saying for the program in this amount of years, say in 5 years, we had this many students that were accepted who started the program, say if it was like 500, and then they'll tell you about the 10 of them or whatever number they have that did not make it. And if it's a high attrition rate, then there's something wrong, because there's like qualifications and regulations on how many students you can have not pass and all these different things. So if it's a high one for that school, you want to be wary, because there's probably something wrong, either like academically or like maybe the students they're admitting. But you want to make sure you go to a school that has a pretty low attrition rate, and then you can kind of compare it to the national average, and all that you can kind of find on the internet, based on like the national average, and then comparing it to what the school's attrition rate is. So the reason why I like my school is because they told us what the attrition rate is, and then they knew exactly what happened to every student who did not make it. So that was a nice thing. So you're kind of like, okay, and it was such a small rate. It was like family issues, or this person's family member died, or this person got sick. Okay, great. So of course everybody's not going to make it, but at least I know exactly what it is, and there's only a small handful of them. So you want to make sure you look at that. And then the next thing is you want to look at your passing rates for the CRNA boards. So you might not find it again on their website, but you will get information about it when you interview for schools. So pretty much they tell you, all right, this is the national average for people passing for CRNA schools, the boards, and then this is our average. So of course, if the school is above average, that's great. And then depending on what it is, you're like, okay, that means they're definitely doing a great job at teaching their student and preparing them to take the boards, because most states you cannot practice as a CRNA without passing your boards, for exception of like I think West Virginia, apparently you can. Someone can clarify that for me if you want to, but I read that you could. But needless to say, you want to make sure you're passing your board. So you want to go to a school that has a great rate of passing. And if it's above the national average, that's even better. And then the last thing I would say is the rankings on the USA News that people like to use. I'm going to speak on this kind of loosely. So I know I looked at it, but they tend to say it's almost like a popularity contest. I think you need to figure out what you're going to a CRNA school for. Like, what are you looking for? So for me, I'm going to a CRNA school. I want it to be a well-known CRNA school that does great, that spits out, I don't want to say spits out, but that produces excellent CRNAs, so that I can be able to get the best education possible, so that I can be able to practice independently if I wanted to. Also, the biggest thing for me is I don't know if I'm going to stay in the state that I'm in, because since I moved from one state to another, I want to be able to have the opportunity where people know the CRNAs that graduated from my school. So for me, I did look at the ranking just as like the beginning part, and then when I interviewed at the school and looked at all the other numbers and felt the connection that I wanted to feel compared to like some of the other interviews, I knew that this program was the best match for me. So all in all, those are the things that I would say are kind of things you want to look at when you're looking into CRNA programs. And there's definitely a ton more, but I feel like you can't really find videos on stuff like what's front-loaded versus integrated. What are things that you need to look for specifically for clinical sites? What are things like the passing rates? What is the attrition rate and stuff like that? But if you guys have any other ideas on things, just let me know. I can definitely post a video on that or make comments. So thank you for watching my video on the things that you should look into for CRNA school. Thanks. See you later.